So we've gotten an introduction to machine learning, learned about gradient descent, we've learned about regression, and even fit a regression model to a data set. And now I want to move on to classification. Classification is a huge part of machine learning. It is a type of supervised learning, which you remember is where the data is already labeled for us. And essentially in classification, we're trying to fit a model to our data or train a model to assign particular examples in our data set to a category or what we call a class. And in this section, we're only going to focus on binary classification. And so that means there's only two classes. Some examples of this classification and also binary classification would be customer churn prediction, where you're trying to train a model based off user behavior or a customer's behavior to predict whether this customer will leave or unsubscribe from your product within a certain amount of time or stay. And that's a binary classification because there's only two classes, either the customer stays or they churn, right? And loan default prediction is also another example of binary classification where you have some details about a particular potential borrower and their financial information, and you're trying to predict whether they will default on a loan that they're given or they won't default. So there's only two options there, two classes, and that's binary classification, and you can train a model to do that. Medical diagnosis is also one. You'll see it with deep learning mainly, where you have the images of a particular person's lungs or their brain or some part of their body, and your model's job is to classify whether they have cancer or not cancer. Something very simple like that. It'll likely be way more complicated in production, but that's an example. So the cost function that we used for regression was mean squared error. In classification and binary, in our case, we're going to use cross entropy loss. And I'm going to explain to you what that is in the next video. But cross entropy loss is a little bit different, and it's specifically made for calculating the error of our classification model. Now, some types of classification models are logistic regression. That's going to be the first one that we go over. Decision trees, you may have heard of those. We're going to go over those as well as random forest, where random forests are a collection of decision trees. There's also support vector machines and k-nearest neighbors. We won't cover those, but they are very popular. And there's many more that you can use for classification, but we're going to cover logistic regression, decision trees, and random forests. Those are the most popular that you'll see. So classification is just that. We're assigning an example to a category or class. You see this image over here, which was in an earlier slide, but I have some data points, each with two features, this feature right here and this feature right here. And we're just trying to teach a model how to, draw this decision boundary here. And in this case, this is multi-class classification, not binary classification. But you get the gist that we're trying to classify each one of these points into separate groups. In our case, there would just be two groups right now, but that's what classification is.